What if I told you that the most important instruction for your life, the one key to unlock your full potential, has nothing to do with manifestation, positive thinking, or any of the so-called spiritual tricks you see all over TikTok? What if the answer wasn't secret at all, but a piece of ancient wisdom that has been right in front of our eyes for thousands of years, yet it is completely misunderstood? Before we dive deep, a little background. I've been asked to redo the video on my Greek channel because the original was one of the first I ever made and the sound quality wasn't great. Since I'm making a new version for the Greek channel, I decided to do one in English for my English channel as well. And trust me, what we are about to explore is not what you think. This video is about something that might be the most misunderstood concept in the modern world. Know thyself. What does this phrase truly mean? Many people think it is just an ancient saying. However, it is perhaps the most important instruction for our lives. It has nothing to do with the fluff of the New Age movement, with life coaches, or all the superficial stuff that is out there. It is not just positive thinking, and it is not about doing a meditation to unlock your third eye. Know thyself points to something far deeper, the discovery of your true self, of your higher self, of your nous. Now, nous, as I have mentioned before, is often translated as mind, but that's misleading. It is not the mind as we usually understand it. It is not thinking, reasoning, and calculating. The nous is above the mind. It is the eye of the soul. It's the part of us that can perceive truth directly without any distortion. Greek thought and Buddhism share more than one might expect. In fact, during the Hellenistic era, there was even a direct encounter between the two, and it's seen, for example, in the Greco-Buddhist art. Their difference and the question of the self is essential. Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, a flow of changing phenomena with no lasting core. Greek philosophy, however, claims the opposite, that there is a true self and it exists more strongly than anything else. And this true self, it's not the everyday ego, it's not the masks we wear, but the higher principle within us, this nous. For Plato, the soul shares in the eternal world of ideas. For Aristotle, the nous is the active intellect. It is immortal and divine. Where Buddhism sees emptiness and the fading away of the self, Greek thought sees the deepest ground of our being. It's the principle that connects us with the divine itself, with the whole cosmos. The more you become this nous, the more you can find your strengths, and it is the key to understanding yourself and the whole universe. Here the Greeks introduced something else, another concept, methexis, which means participation. It means that the human being is not just a passive observer, nor simply someone who sees the world of appearances, the world of the senses, as illusion. Something that modern quantum physics also affirms. It is the one who can participate in a higher reality. Through methexis, we can bring the world of ideas, the higher existence, down into the here and now. And by doing so, we don't merely escape the world, but we transform it, beginning with the transformation of ourselves into what we truly are. The Greek composer Vangelis Papathanasiou, who was deeply interested in philosophy as well as music, once said that from childhood he could hear the music of every human being. To reach such a state is to understand the laws that govern the soul and its parts, the workings of the mind, the movements of our emotions and desires, and above all, the laws of the cosmos. In Greek thought, these laws were revealed through the study of motion, as Plato describes in the Timaeus. Motion is never random. It gives birth to music. When our thoughts, emotions, desires, and actions follow harmonic motion, they create balance. When they are distorted, they fall into disharmony, bringing chaos both within us and around us. Stop here for a second and ponder this. Music is geometry in motion. The harmony of music creates geometrical patterns. The same applies to anything that moves. When we move and we create patterns not only with the movement of our bodies, but also with the movement of our thoughts and emotions. Through methexis, which is participation in the higher reality, we learn to align our inner motion with cosmic harmony. And this is how the soul transforms, and through the soul, the world itself. But the Greeks went even further. They expressed these inner forces not with abstract psychological terms, but with myths and divine names. And in Greek, every name is a key. None is accidental. Each name reflects a law of the soul and of the cosmos. Nemesis, for example, from nemo, which means to distribute, does not mean blind vengeance, but the rebalancing force that restores harmony. The mire, the fates, from mirome, which means to receive one's share, it's not cruel destiny, but the rightful share that belongs to each being according to their actions. The Erinies, the Furies from Eris, which means strife, are not monsters of punishment, but the inner conflicts that devour us when we abandon the right order. Mnemosini, which means memory, is the mother of the muses, and it shows that inspiration arises through anamnesis, which is to remember again, to recollect what the soul already knows. The very word musa, muse, is linked to the verb mao, which means to seek, to invent, to inquire. The word music comes too from the same verb. Hypnos, sleep, and oniro, dream, are guides between the visible and the invisible worlds. Alithia, truth, comes from alpha, the privative alpha, meaning not, and lithi, which means forgetting. Truth is therefore not an invention, but an unveiling. It's the act of not letting reality fall into forgetfulness. And then comes the deeper chain of words, mio, mythos, and mysteria, mystery. Mio means to close the eyes of or the mouth and to turn inward, to signify the unseen, the unspoken, the hidden. It's closely related to meditation. From mio, we pass to mythos, originally not a fairy tale, but dark speech. It's a sacred teaching. It's an oral tradition, a story that carries hidden truth. By dark, we must not imagine demons or superstitions, but rather what Carl Jung called the shadow, the unseen, unconscious side of ourselves that seeks expressions through symbols. Myth, in this sense, is the mirror of the hidden part of the psyche. Here we must make a pause to make a distinction that even Plato himself emphasizes. In Greek, a fairy tale is called paramythi. The word itself means beside the myth. Para means alongside, beside, plus the word mythos. Paramyth is a story told alongside the truth, and it's usually for children, which might as well be false or fanciful or whatever. But mythos, in its original meaning, it is not a children's tale. It's a vehicle of truth. It's a symbolic language of the soul, pointing to cosmic and psychic realities. Myth is not to be confused with paramythi. What myth does in the mind is something very specific. It cultivates creative imagination along with associative thinking and exploration. And this brings us to the third and final term, mysteria, the mysteries. The word signifies the totality of what is hidden, secret teachings and rites aimed at initiation, which is myths, and through them the soul did not merely hear the myth but was invited to live it, to participate in it through ritual, symbol and inner transformation. Myths means initiation. It's the expansion of consciousness and the approach to the divine aspects hidden within human. Through ritual, symbol and personal practice, the initiate was trying to connect in harmony with the cosmic law and the resolution of the inner disharmony and the purification of the soul. From mio, to initiate, comes mystis, the one who is initiated. And in ancient times the mystes kept their eyes and ears closed in the first stage of initiation in order to learn how to start seeing in a different way. The mysteries were never simple external ceremonies, they were maps of consciousness. Through them, one ascended level by level, unveiling hidden powers and awakening the divine spark, the daemonion, within. Their symbolic enactments taught the destinies of the soul after death, the law of reciprocity, which the law of karma basically, which in Greek is called antipeponthon, and the unity that binds all beings together. The term antipeponthon comes from anti, which means in return, in opposition, and pascho, which is to suffer, to undergo, and literally means that which is suffered in return. It is the principle that every act brings its corresponding consequence, sooner or later. A notion that is very similar to karma, and it was already rooted deeply in the Greek tradition. Seen in this way, mythology is not just primitive storytelling, as I have often heard in the English-speaking YouTube. It is a map of our psyche and of the reality we create. The gods are archetypes of harmony and disharmony, of order and chaos. They are mirrors of the motions within us. The Greek gods are not fixed characters, they are living laws. Each name encodes a motion of the soul and the cosmos. Nemesis is the balance restored, the Mire are the portion given, the Erineas are inner strife unleashed, and mythology itself is a mirror of the psyche in movement, a cosmic psychology long before modern psychology. To know thyself is to recognize these motions within and through methexis participation bring them into harmony with the higher order. That's why the ancient Greeks said, know thyself and you will know the universe and the gods. The purpose of the human, his very destiny, is knowing himself. From being to becoming, the movement of evolution. Look inside yourself. Sooner or later, you'll understand that you are not something random, isolated and disconnected, but a part of the universe, a part of nature, a part of the world. Plato tells us that this is the world of becoming, the world of gignaste in Greek. Becoming, gignaste, comes from the Greek verb gignome, which is to become. So this is the world of evolution. The purpose of knowing thyself isn't, as some say, to be who you are. That's a static state. It's about becoming the best possible version of yourself. And becoming implies movement. It's a process of transformation and a process of self-realization. But before we understand who we are, we must understand what we are. Is this mystical nonsense and superstition, or is there logic behind it? Could it be that mathematics itself is hidden behind this? The ego and the masks, the tip of the iceberg. If you ask someone, do you know who you are? They will probably say, of course, what a stupid question. Yet, they are wrong. And understanding this, that this is a mistake, is what unlocks the doors for you. Know thyself doesn't mean knowing that you like burgers but not pizza, or that you are a good musician but not a good cook. All this has to do with your ego and not with who you truly are. It has to do with recognizing your ego. Most people think they are their ego, and they lose the infinity of what they truly are. They settle and perceive themselves only through a tiny, small aspect of their ego's consciousness, without seeing the bigger picture. It is like looking at a circle from so close that your nose is pressed against the surface. You will never ever see, you will never understand or perceive that you are dealing with a circle. You have to take a distance to step back, and you have to see yourself from a distance, as if you were watching the protagonist in a movie or the hero in a video game playing at a level, and until they get better, they are losing lives. Conscious and unconscious, the flashlight of the ego. Human consciousness and nature are boundless and unlimited. We have many aspects, the conscious and the subconscious, and within the subconscious we have the individual and the collective unconscious. To understand who we truly are, we need to understand these concepts. The conscious is the aspect of ourselves that we all know. The subconscious is the aspect of ourselves that exists, but we don't know it exists. And the collective unconscious is the programming and everything that comes from society as a whole, which makes us who we are. Of course, a society like ours that functions completely wrong has wrong programming. The ego is in the center of our conscious mind and what gives you the ability to be a separate unit. But without the ego, we would be in a very primitive state, not even in an animalistic state, like even less than that, operating only by instinct. The ego develops when you begin to have a perception of yourself, and the ego distinguishes and separates you from others. So the ego is the story of who you are at a specific phase of your level of consciousness. Many in the New Age say that the ego must die, and that's nonsense. If the ego died, we would not become animals, we would become amoebas, life without structure, drifting without direction. What we must avoid is defining ourselves by the ego. Our ego is just one aspect of ourselves. Masks, the servants of the ego. The relationship between the various personas, the masks we wear, and our ego will help us understand the difference between the ego and the true self. The ego is what we are when we are alone at home, when we can act as we think we are without anyone else around us to judge us. The masks are what we wear in different social situations. We have different masks depending on where we are and who we are with. At work, you behave differently than when you are at home with your friends or your family. The masks are basically filtered, adapted versions of your ego that allow you to function within the complexity of society. They are not a bad thing. They allow us to be diplomatic. But the danger comes when you identify with your masks, when you believe you are the mask. In that case, the mask has stuck to your face and you cannot remove it, and you have severely limited yourself. And this is precisely the meaning of the masks in Greek tragedy. They were not merely theatrical props, but symbols pointing to this very truth, that what we present to the world is not our essence, but our own. Dionysos, god of theater, wine and ecstasy, was also the god of the mask. Yet, for the Greeks, the mask was never only a disguise. In the Dionysian ritual, the mask revealed as much as it conceived. It showed that identity is fluid, that roles can change, and that behind every mask is a deeper self. The mask was the threshold between illusion and revelation. And just as the masks are aspects of our ego itself is a mask of our higher self. Our higher self, the nous, is the totality of what we are. The ego and our persona are only a tiny fraction of us. Our ego is just the tip of the iceberg. It is like being in a huge house with countless corridors and rooms and holding a flashlight. The flashlight is your ego and your conscious mind. To think that you are your ego, it's like thinking that the only thing that exists is what you see at the moment with your flashlight. But what you truly are is that huge house. Your ego is just your tool for self-discovery. And outside the house, there's a garden, there's a street, there's a mountain, lakes. The science of the self, episteme. To connect with our true self, we must stop defining ourselves by our ego. If you try to destroy it, you lose your flashlight. But if you recognize your profound nature, you then begin to epistase. The dictionary of Platonic philosophy, Speusippus's terms, says about episteme: υπόλοιψης ψυχής αμετάπτωτος υπό του λόγου. This means a perception of the soul that remains unchangeable by reason. Etymologically, episteme, which means science in Greek, that's where we get epistemology. Epi means on something, and istame, it's I stand. So, istame means to stand upright, to have existence, to have presence, to have essence. And to become a scientist in the original sense of the word is like a fly. It's like finding more and more switches in a house and turning on the lights in different rooms one by one, and gradually exploring and knowing your house in its entirety. And this is what it means to expand consciousness. It is to make the unconscious conscious. A true scientist, therefore, was not simply a collector of data, but someone aware of the knowledge of the self in combination with the knowledge of the world. Such a person could not be corrupted, because their integrity rested on the very harmony between inner truth and outer reality. The shadow, the other side of our masks. As we said, the opposite of our masks, it is not the ego, but our shadow, according to Carl Jung. The masks are our accepted aspects, while the shadow is all the aspects of ourselves that we deny because they are unacceptable to society. And we bury them so deeply that we don't even know they exist. And this is where Medusa, with her many snake heads, comes in, whom we must decapitate like Perseus. The name Perseus comes from Pertho, which means to conquer, to cut. And the name Medusa comes from Medo, which means to rule, to govern. From the very analysis of these names, we can discern positions, oppositions, and the inner war that takes place within us. And this is exactly what Heraclitus means when he says that war is the father of all and king of all. He makes some gods, others men, he makes some slaves and others free. War is not only external conflict, it's the very dialectic process within each one of us. Polemos, war, is related to polis, which means city, with polarity, and pola, which means the many. So the movement of war is precisely the movement from multiplicity to unity, from the many towards the one. The first step to putting the pieces of our puzzle together is to identify all these hidden aspects of ourselves, which is our shadow, and the thing we denied about ourselves, but which program our thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And these can be issues of anger, depression, sexual repression, laziness, greed, defeatism. All these are parts of ourselves that we deny that they exist. For example, the word sin in ancient Greek, amartia, means missing the mark. It's not an act to be eliminated or that you have to go and confess. It's a part of yourself that you must face and correct. And this is done only with self-observation, not with belief, not with ideologies, and not with materialism. That's why we see scandals everywhere. Everyone operates unconsciously in a sick way and with repressed emotions, convincing themselves that they are not what they truly are. But these repressions swell over time, and we must start looking at our shadow. Our shadow hides our creative ego. Our shadow doesn't only hide bad things, it also hides a buried creative side. It is our uniqueness that socialization suppresses. What is unacceptable to society? Not having your own thoughts, not asking questions, not being creative, and not standing out. If you do something different, people will look at you strangely. If you start doing something that is the opposite of what most people would do, they'll tell you, you cannot do that. And yet, it's the same people that admire artists, applaud them, pay them to go and see the concerts, but the same people will tell their child, don't become a musician. So what do they admire in the end? Perhaps this freedom of movement that a musician has on stage? That's it. So, as a defensive mechanism, the average person buries their good creative elements as well. But energy and information cannot be destroyed. They are transformed and hidden. And yet, all this can be unlocked by bringing it into consciousness through self-observation. Envy and jealousy, the power of the traits we admire. The uncultivated and unconscious transforms our hidden desires into envy. Envy in Greek, it's phonos, comes from the verb phthino, which means to shrink, to contract. Essentially, envy is the state in which you admire something in someone else, but at the same time, you feel incapable of achieving it yourself. It is the passive and destructive side of admiration. This feeling of inadequacy is captured perfectly in the well-known fable of Aesop, The Fox and the Grapes. A fox tries to reach a bunch of grapes hanging from a vine, but it cannot do it. And instead of admitting defeat, the fox walks away saying, these grapes were sour anyways. So he convinces himself that they weren't worth having rather than facing his own failure. And this is the core of envy. Convincing yourself for something that you cannot have is flawed instead of acknowledging your own limitations. On the other hand, jealousy, zilia, is the healthy manifestation of desire. It comes from the word zelos, how we say zeal in English. This is where the word comes from, as well as jealousy, and it means that you work with zeal to incorporate the characteristics you admire into yourself. This is the active and creative side of admiration. When we don't recognize this difference, we risk falling into pathological situations, from addicted attachment in a relationship to fanaticism in political or religious doctrines. When we give our personal power to a leader, a musician, or any other person, believing steadfastly in something outside of us, we are led gradually to extreme ideologies and situations. What we need to do is examine what powerful traits we want to acquire, cultivate them instead of giving our power to someone else. We must let people inspire us and not passively follow them. The mirroring, the discovery of the opposite self. We have our shadow, which is the opposite of our masks, and we also have mirroring, which is the opposite of our ego. And here lies our potential self, all the things we admire and which are in the drawer of our subconscious. Our desire to become something we want is projected through our admiration for something or someone else. To become more whole, we need to discover and cultivate our opposite elements. If you are a practical, extroverted and logical person, start spending some time with yourself, cultivating your intuition and your artistic side. If you are introverted, emotional and artistic, learn to think logically. Take geometry lessons, read Plato or Epictetus and learn etymology. This process of holistic development makes us more flexible and resilient. And essentially, you acquire a huge toolbox that you can use at any time. This is what it means to become the protagonist of your life. Protagonist means the first player, the first actor in movies, for example, but the word comes from proto, which means first, and ago, which means I lead, I move forward, I elevate, I become the very situation. The union of opposites, virtue and the good life. The process of uniting opposites is done through dialectics. The human soul operates with pairs of opposites: sun, moon, day, night, conscious, unconscious, male, female. These are archetypes in Greek philosophy and in other traditions too. The power that drives us inward to seek the missing part of ourselves is eros. The word eros carries this mystery. It comes from the verb iro, which means to connect, to join together, and from erao, which means to desire passionately something. So eros is both the bond and the burning. It is the tension of opposites that are waiting to be united. For this reason, the Greeks did not see Eros as a god in the strict sense, but as a demon, a being in between, an intermediary, if you want, between the human being and the cosmos. The gods are whole in themselves. They are laws of motion. The demon, however, is the spirit of striving, of incompleteness that longs for completion. And Eros is Delphi, which means two-natured. He exists in the gap between unity and separation, between the human and the divine. Plato, in the Symposium, through the voice of Diotima, Socrates' teacher, who was a priestess and a philosopher, tells us that Eros has two faces, and he is born from Aphrodite. The Pandimos, which is the common Eros, the Eros of the people, which is tied to the body and its appetites, and the Urania, which is heavenly Eros, which means that the soul turns towards beauty, truth, and immortality. Both are real, both are necessary, because one without the other cannot complete the circle. In Jungian terms, Eros is the movement of the psyche towards integration. It's the call of anima and animus, the hidden counterparts that invite us to a greater wholeness. Through this demonic striving, the human soul discovers its own divine potential, not as something ready-made, but as something born in the very fire of desire and the discipline of unification. How these archetypes unite is different for each person, and that's why there are 12 main gods in the pantheon, 6 male and 6 female. Each god, apart from a creative force of the universe, is also an archetype for our souls. A person's desire to turn inward and see their opposites is called Eros. Jung named them anima, the inner feminine side of a man, and animus, the inner masculine side of a woman. When these opposites are integrated, what emerges is not balance, it's a higher synthesis. This is the higher self, the totality of our being aligned with the creative order of existence. The Greeks called the unfolding of this harmony arete, virtue, the full flowering of one's nature. Our higher self is our totality. It's the harmonious synthesis of all of these opposites. This is basically virtue, arete. It's the acquisition of a life with an F-zine. It is translated F-zine as good life. This is the definition of an intelligent person. It's called Ephiis, the one who grows. Phio is the word to grow, to cultivate something. And F represents the golden ratio of things, the golden ratio of a person's life circle. To live in this state, it is then to become truly Ephiis, truly intelligent, one who grows beautifully in resonance with the golden ratio that shapes not only temples and galaxies, but also the hidden proportions of the human spirit. Thus the soul is revealed as a microcosm of the very creative force of the universe, and our journey towards integration becomes nothing less than the cosmos becoming conscious of itself. The Delphic maxims remind us of the fundamental principles. Γνώθεις αυτόν, know thyself, μηδέν άγαν, nothing in excess, έγκυα παραδάτα, to give a guarantee will bring ruin. These are the basic instructions to stay alert. From Dhyania to Noesis, the evolution of consciousness. We are all stuck in the divisions of Plato's divided line: assumption, belief, Dhyania, and Noesis. Imagination led us to the belief of the Middle Ages. From belief, we moved to the scientific materialism and Dhyania of our days. That's the level of Dhyania, where we ended up having some that tell us we are sinners and others that we are a random mass of flesh and bones. So maybe it's time to move on to Noesis. In Noesis, both cerebral hemispheres work at their maximum possible level. We are everything. We just need to find out who we are. We are the infinite. The process is know thyself, the highest form of philosophy. Thank you very much. Bye.